We are going to be reading Junie B. Jones, Cheater Pants. Chapter 1. Here's a picture of Junie B. Jones, and I'm going to guess that this is May. Chapter 1, A plus May. Monday. Dear First Grade Journal, yesterday was the weekend. The weekend is the nickname of Saturday and Sunday, only I don't know why. Those 2 days zoomed by speedy quick. That's how come I didn't have time to do my homework. 'Cause what do I look like? A clock or something? Last night I begged to stay up to do it, but Daddy said no and he turned out my light. That was not helpful. Now I am at school and Mr. Scary said to please take out our homework. I feel sickish inside. I hope that Daddy is proud of himself. From Junie B., first grader. Next to me, May got out her homework out of her backpack and she put it on her desk and she smoothed out her paper and smiled. I'm sure I'll get another A+ on this one. I get an A+ on all my homework papers, Junie Jones, she said. One time my homework was so perfect, Mr. Scary sent a happy note home to my mom and dad. I did a shrug. Blah, 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 I said back. May did a mad face at me. Then she tapped on Lenny on the back of his head. Lenny, did you hear what I just said to Junie Jones, she asked. I told her that I always get an A+ on my homework. Lenny turned around. Please don't touch my hair, May, he said. I used my brand new gel to spike it today, and I don't want you messing it up. I waved at Lenny across the aisle. You know, she always waves. I would never touch your hair, Leonard, I said. Your hair looks like an interesting glob of artwork almost, and artwork should just be gawked at. Lenny nodded. Thank you, Junie B. Jones. You're welcome, Lenny, whose last name starts with an S, I think. She doesn't even know his last name, I said. After that, I smiled at May very smugly. Lenny likes me way better than he likes her. May squinted her eyes at me. How come you didn't take your homework out yet, Junie Jones, she said. You're not following directions very well this morning, are you? I did a big breath. And then I quickly reached into my backpack and I pulled out a rumpled paper. And I pretended it was my homework. There, I said, there's my homework. Now please mind your own beeswax, you snoopy booper, May. May's face got reddish and flushy. She started to raise her hand to Tattletale, only just then the teacher called her name. May, it's your day to take attendance sheet to the office, he said. Would you like to come up here and get it, please? Yes, she said, I would love to, Mr. Scary. The attendance sheet is when teachers send the names of the absent children to the office. I do not actually approve of that practice. May hurried to the front of the room. I'm never absent, Mr. Scary, said May. I'm always here. Have you ever noticed that, huh? Have you ever noticed I'm always here? Mr. Scary closed his eyes for a second. Oh, yes, May, he said. Believe me, I've noticed. May did a giggle. Also, I'm always punctual, she said. Have you ever noticed that too? Have you noticed how punctual I am? And she smiled at the class. Punctual means on time, everyone, she explained. Last year I was so punctual, I got the Punctual Award. The Punctual Award is awarded for a child who is the most punctual. Mr. Scary stared at her and said to please stop saying punctual. After that, May took the attendance sheet and she skipped to the door. Don't worry, room 1, I will get this attendance sheet to the office. All safe and sound, she said real loud. Then everyone who isn't here will get reported to the principal, and that's exactly what they deserve. Mr. Scary did a sigh. Please, May, just go, okay? He said. May did a wave, and then she hurried out the door. After she was gone, I roamed my eyes around the room. All the children had their homework papers out, but me. My insides felt sickish again, because pretty soon Mr. Scary would find out that I didn't do my assignment. I swallowed real hard. I kept my eyes roaming around, and then, what do you know? They roamed over to May's desk. Surprise, surprise, I saw her homework paper sitting there. It was right out in plain view. My heart pounded and pounded at that sight, because my brain was getting an idea, that's why. And I tapped on my chin, very thinking. And then, quick as a mouse, I pulled May's paper a little closer, and I copied what it said. After I got it done, I breathed in relief. Because now I had my homework paper. And I smiled just to myself, and then I closed my eyes. And I whispered thank you to May for letting me borrow her homework. Chapter 2, Weekend Fund. May got back from the office and she stood in the door and waved again. I did it, everyone. I got the attendance sheet to the office, just like I promised. And she looked at Mr. Scary. It went very well, too, she said. There were no problems I couldn't handle. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. Okay, well, thank you, May. You can take your seat now, please, he said. But May kept right on talking. At first, I didn't know where to put it, but then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket. So I followed her directions perfectly, she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. Excellent, he said. Now, please, sit down, okay? May didn't pay any attention again. When I was in kindergarten, I got an E+ for following directions. E+ is better than excellent. The plus sign means extra excellent. Just then, Mr. Scary stood up and he took May's hand and he walked her to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something nice to say to her because I was still happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped on her arm and I smiled. Welcome back, madam, I said real friendly. May did a frown at me. What kind of crack is that, she said. I just looked at her. Friendly does not come natural to us, I think. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk and he walked to the board and he wrote these words. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was... Okay, everyone, he said. For your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete that sentence. Remember? Room 1 nodded. Good, said Mr. Scary, because this morning I'd like each of you to read your homework paper to the class. That way we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Doesn't that sound like fun? Room 1 nodded again. Even if it doesn't sound like fun, you still have to nod. Mr. Scary smiled. Well, we'll go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn. And he pointed at Lucille. Lucille, why don't you start us off, he said. Lucille sits at the first row by the window. Last year, me and her were bestest friends, but this year, we're just regular. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself, and then she picked up her paper and she started to read. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon, and both of us got manicures and pedicures. Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. You got a pedicure, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it, he said. And Lucille shrugged. For some people, maybe, she said. She looked down and kept on reading. Also, we each got a papaya fruit facial, and Nana got her herbal body wrap, plus I got a seaweed scalp massage. Mr. Scary stood there for a second, and then he nodded very slow. All righty then, he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chenille. Those two are twin sets. Camille stood up. This weekend, Chenille and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box, and we put on a show for our little brother Neil. Mr. Scary beamed at that nurse. Oh, that's great, girls, he said. I bet doing a puppet show for your brother was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Not really, said Camille. Neil kept grabbing the puppets off our hands, and he made them kill each other. We don't like Neil, said Chenille. Neil is a bat, said Camille. Mr. Scary just stood there some more. Then finally he moved on to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get pizza with my dad, and I ate the whole entire anchovy. And I didn't throw up until I was almost home. Room 1 clapped and clapped for that amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekend. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn because I love to talk in front of the class, of course. Plus, all I had to do was tell about my weekend, and Mr. Scary would think I did my homework. I put my paper I copied from May into my desk. I didn't need it after all, because what do you know? Today, I lucked out. Next will be chapter 3, but we will read that at another time. All righty. So I hope you're enjoying so far Junie B. Jones' Cheater Pants.